Here it is, the game all my thumbnails are based on. I'm sure it was a little weird seeing that for the first time, right? Well, there is a reason for it, and that's because Razor's Edge is what got me into Ninja Gaiden. At that time, I had borrowed Sigma 1 and Sigma 2 from a friend, and they didn't really leave much of an impression on me. Thought they were fine enough. But then he showed me the demo for the newest game. Now, I didn't even know about Vanilla 3 or the fact this was a second version. For me, this was my first experience with the third mainline game. And yeah, I was hooked, becoming a fan of not only this game, but the entire franchise ever since. But little did I know I'd become a rare defender of a game that everyone hated. Seemed pretty weird because how could you not like doing Still on Bones and just cleaving through crowds of enemies? My experience was nothing but fun, so what gives? Well, that's because their first impressions was from an entirely different game. Then word of mouth kicked in and cemented this game's fate for over a decade. And wanna know what's funny? Razor's Edge, the fix to most of the problems, released only 6 months after Vanilla 3. So even with the insanely fast turnaround with major improvements, it was too late. Damage was already done, and this updated version was already shunned before it was given a fair shake. It's a shame, but it goes to show how first impressions are everything. I'm glad public opinion is slowly turning around, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So it's still in a weird spot right now, but let's hope this video can help add to that movement and bring in some new fans to one of the most underrated games in the series. This is Combat Overview. Here we go over the general controls, the main mechanics, who or what we use them on, and then seeing how it all comes together. While there's nothing really new we haven't already went over, there's lights and heavies, each with their own directional attacks. You can either start with it or link into them midway for alternate routes. There's running attacks. Running light is actually really good, shuriken cancelable too. Wall attacks still exist, but I probably used them once or twice in the 10 playthroughs I did for the video. That's because stages aren't cramped like past games, just being these way more flat and spacious areas instead. And of course, you can string them together for different combos. But there's a laundry list of them now. I'd be the first to admit, most of these I haven't even messed with, but hey, the options are there if you wish to experiment. Yeah, even though our tools are similar, with some neat additions of course, how we go about using them is a totally different story. So just like before, this game is meant to push you away from past habits, same way 2 did to 1. So things like all landing light with the dragon sword shouldn't be used anymore. Talon's flying swallow into a Zuna drop has been removed. Guillotine throw is nowhere near as useful. It could be deleted from the game and it wouldn't matter. And of course, many other changes were made, like removing items, key slots, and essence entirely. So yeah, if the game feels different, well, that's kind of the point. It sort of tackles those really strong options from previous games. Now it does lean more towards Ninja Gaiden 2, which is how fast and gruesome it is. But these very intentional changes want us to approach this game as its own thing. And I like how we have to form new tactics because of that. Gives Razor's Edge its own identity. Speaking of which, the new Still on Bone mechanic. So when enemies splash red, they're about to do this really damaging guard break attack or an unblockable grab. Yeah, it's best to avoid these, but they're also vulnerable to our new Still on Bone counterattack. This new mechanic is sort of like a clash parry, I suppose. That's because we have to time our heavy attack against their attack during a specific window. And if done right, you have full iframes, recover a small amount of health for each enemy, get a lot of karma, build a good chunk of ki, and will instantly kill any enemy, both big and small. Well, not too small because Still on Bone doesn't work on dogs or bugs, for example. I will say this though, these do not get old. You think it would at some point, but it doesn't. I think it's the animation, how it builds the right amount of tension before having that quick release. Then the visual and audio effects too, everything's just well put together. But anyways, when it comes to human-sized enemies like soldiers or ninjas, it'll begin a chain. So mash heavy to cleave through that first guy, then continue to press that button to do the same to another nearby enemy, just mowing down entire crowds in an instant. Now this chain doesn't last forever. There's actually a few factors if it continues or not. For one, it can whiff. So if there's no one close by, then it'll end there, dropping the chain short. Now you can work around this with specific weapons. The scythe, for example, has amazing reach, and you even spin towards him too, so you're definitely not whiffing with this thing. For reason 2, it's level dependent, so at your weapon's base level, it can chain twice, then at level 2, ups it to 3 enemies, and once fully leveled, you can chain up to 4 enemies with a single Still on Bone. So there is an upper limit on your potential chain, but as long as you level up your weapon, you'll shred. And 3, enemy types. So early on, something like the shield guys will stop your chain short, or it'll be a one and done deal against gorillas or snakes. And you won't see this until Ultimate Ninja, but the assassins will get a new passive to cancel your chain, before getting severed in two, of course. Some major bosses can be still unboned as well, won't be an instant kill, but will deal solid damage at least. Yeah, there's a few things to keep track of as you can tell. So as powerful as this mechanic can be, it's not this be-all end-all move. There's actual counterplay and caveats to be mindful of, which leads to interesting adaptation. Now it doesn't matter which enemy it is, but I will always recommend you slide before attempting that Still on Bone. And yeah, there's a few reasons why. For one, tossing out that neutral heavy attack in the hopes it'll connect is a bit risky. Standing still gives enemies a chance to surround you, but it also means a higher likelihood you'll be clipped during your startup. Yeah, you'll just be interrupted most times and take big damage instead. So the slide escapes those swarming crowds with full life frames. 2, it avoids wonky targeting. We know Ryu has a mind of his own at times, so even if you timed it properly, he might go for the wrong guy. But the slide really does help your chances to connect since you get in close. And 3, we're able to buffer that heavy attack during a slide. Think of it as jumping into Royal Guard in DMC3, or dropping your ADS into counter like RE6. It's just a more consistent way to perform this counter attack as we chain iframes. So be sure to slide before attempting that Still on Bone. It'll just make things a lot easier. Oh, and another thing, after you slide, there's no need to aim your heavy attack with the left thumbstick. It'll have you do forward Y and you'll probably whiff because of its short range. So instead, just leave the left thumbstick in neutral after sliding, and press heavy attack to have a clean Still on Bone. For such a simple concept, it has a lot going on. Well, there's still more to go over. Okay, now there is a chance enemies will do this red attack in neutral, but it can honestly take a while. So long in fact, you soon realize you'll take some chip damage from waiting around for it to appear. That's what happens when you do nothing. So it's best to play as normal with that proactive approach and just be ready to react. But you can force their hand by playing aggressively, especially by setting up D-limbs. I mainly use the katana, so the full basic light combo is pretty solid. The running legs are really great, like I said. The first 2 attacks have a solid chance to D-limb, and if it does, it can lead into an OT. Anyways, at level 1, I like doing light forward lights, especially just the first one, because it's very quick and it's shuriken cancelable. So you stagger them, and you're able to freely react soon after. Then at level 2, you'll gain access to one of the best strings in the entire game, and that's light, forward, heavy. This thing is absolutely insane. It's decently fast, has multiple chances to D-limb, so it might instant kill based on the double D-limb roll, and even if it doesn't D-limb, these sweeps are so wide it'll crowd control it extremely well. Even has a chance to hit behind you at times, which means there's a possibility to D-limb up to 3 enemies at once if you're lucky. Then at level 3, you get even more heavies tacked on the end, and these are great at catching their evades or break their guards too. There's even a chance to D-limb after that as well. Oh, did I mention it tracks like crazy too? So it goes without saying, this should be one of your best strings that you cycle into your playstyle. It isn't shuriken cancelable though, so keep that in mind, but that's why I like to use light, forward light to approach crowds at times. But yeah, don't overlook these. Okay, now we have enemies in a bad spot, either left with one arm or crawling on the floor. In the past, we would just go in for the OT as soon as possible, but this time, however, it's best to keep them alive, and that's because D-limbed enemies have a higher chance to throw out their desperation red attack. And since you can chain kills with a Still on Bone, it turns a single takedown to a multi-kill. So it's just as much of a defensive tool as it is an offensive one. But be warned, these grabs of theirs are still devastating, so you can't be asleep at the wheel. You must be vigilant and quick to react. But that's what's so great about Still on Bone. It really plays into the high risk, high reward dynamic. It's also why I think this mechanic lives up to the game's subtitle of Razor's Edge. How we need to put ourselves in these volatile situations that can possibly kill us. But that potential reward is just too hard to pass up. Just requires us to march the line between life and death, is all. Nothing too scary. But yeah, overall, I really like Still on Bone. It's pretty cool how it marries the defensive, reaction-based playstyle from Ninja Gaiden 1 and combined it with Ninja Gaiden 2's aggression. Because you have to take the initiative to set up the D-limbs, then actually stay in their danger zone to react. So it's the best of both worlds. Okay, I saved this for later, but that's because a lot is tied to it. So we can still manually charge our own UTs, just hold heavy and it'll begin to power up. But here's the thing, each weapon now has a maximum of 3 levels of UT charge. Yeah, they're a lot more deadly here. And unlike past games, especially 2, UTs cannot end early anymore. So before, UTs will end if it didn't connect with an enemy during its animation, but now, UTs will teleport to any enemy no matter how far they are. So as long as you landed that initial hit, then yeah, you'll get the full value of every UT you toss out. Definitely a nice improvement. And on landing still exists. It removes the startup animations to begin charging sooner, so that works as before. But Essence has been entirely removed, so the metagame has been replaced by DLM, Still on Bone, and Bloody Rage. Jumping the gun a bit, but it's a really fun system that's deeply engaging in its own way. Okay, now let's get into heavy holds. So something new to the game was the ability to link into a heavy attack at nearly any point. It can be doing strings or out of certain animations, and doing so will get us brand new attacks. So just imagine having multiple different haze straight slash attacks, for example. Meaning it's a heavy attack that's neither a standard press or not yet a fully charged UT either. Instead, they're partial or brief charges. So light, brief, heavy hold will be different than the standard ender. Same goes for slide into heavy, heavy. A brief heavy hold can alter those enders, which again, can be done practically anywhere. It's why our move list is incredibly long now, amongst many other reasons. Oh, and if the enemy happens to be delimbed as you heavy hold, it'll automatically become an OT. So we no longer have to delay our next heavy input like Ninja Gaiden 2. This new mechanic just allows for immediate follow-up. But yeah, you can also attempt a full heavy hold, which preps you too. And it works sort of like on landings. So it'll remove all startup and quickly begin charging as soon as possible. Yeah, it's also a pretty neat change. Now, if you have to abandon these charges early, which are brief heavy holds pretty much, just know you can and should shuriken cancel them. It'll just keep this already free-flowing combat system even more fluid. Definitely get used to doing this because it'll be paramount for certain matchups. But it's also possible to do these heavy holds as you exit other actions, specifically OTs. So as that finisher's playing out, just continue to hold Y. Soon as Ryu can act, he'll buffer a quick charge stance. Not a bad idea since we have iframes as we exit the OT similar to Ninja Gaiden 2. Then from here you can release it as soon as possible to toss out this tracking hyper armor move that can either interrupt, stagger, guard break, or delimb. And its hitbox is large enough to crowd control a bit too. Oh, and it's shuriken cancelable, so you're free to follow up however you see fit. You can back away with the slide or go to your next opponent with the flying swallow, go in for the OT, it's up to you. You can also attempt to fully prep a UT, a level 1 at the very least. But enemies do tend to beeline towards you during this moment. They can either do a regular attack or their red attack. And since we're holding that heavy button, a simple release on reaction will have it become a Still on Bone. So yeah, no matter what they do, you best believe we're winning that interaction. Oh, and another thing, if those nearby enemies happen to be delimbed, it'll link into an OT instead. And since we can prep our next heavy hold soon after, yeah, it means we can chain OTs now. So it's just another improvement to the list. That's all for these heavy holds, but yeah, this is how you're supposed to play Ninja Gaiden 3. These held attacks allow for a more seamless, non-stop offensive playstyle. just giving us more ways to chain into other options with little to no downtime. So get used to holding heavy even more, because it's the intended way to play this game. Now on to the next new mechanic, Bloody Rage. So during a fight, Ryu's arm will begin to glow red. That's how we know Bloody Rage has kicked in. It's also sort of this revamped essence system in a way, because this is how we get instant max UTs. But yeah, while you have this stocked UT, you can play however and save it for a big finisher. And since heavy holds are a thing, it's possible to cancel any string into that instant UT. No onlining setups required. So if you did an OT while in Bloody Rage, for example, then a heavy hold will automatically chain into that Bloody Rage UT. Pretty cool. Just keep in mind, the tier charge of that instant max UT is completely dependent on that weapon's current level. So if it's not upgraded much, then it won't be super effective. However, it is possible to swap weapons and still retain the Bloody Rage. So yeah, if you have to, just be sure to swap to your most upgraded weapon to get the most value possible. But keep in mind, these are still UTs. Yeah, it means they can still whiff on the initial hit. So as long as you're close enough, then yeah, it'll go through. And remember, these UTs will play out by teleporting to the next enemy. So these will definitely clear a room. Before we get into how we obtain this buff, Bloody Rage and the Arm Glow are technically different things, but to make this more easier for myself, I always consider them one and the same. It's rare to have one without the other, even though that is possible. But again, we're just going to combine the two. Okay, as we should know by now, these things can be quite complicated. A little bit. So it's not just about playing fast and aggressive, getting multiple kills as soon as possible. It also matters what we kill and how we do it. Oh yeah, even the difficulty you're playing on plays a factor into all of this as well. So, each enemy type are assigned their own values pretty much. Human enemies are worth the least, while the more elite ones will reward even more points. Then once you have reached a certain point threshold, which again is totally dependent on the difficulty, you'll then be rewarded with this Bloody Rage UT. This tally system isn't shown to the player, unfortunately, so unless you're mentally keeping track, it'll seem random as to when it appears. But to keep it simple, just continue to mow down enemies and it'll appear eventually. However, the way you finish an enemy also determines if you'll gain points. Well, it's easier to say what does it. So if the finishing blow was done by an ultimate technique of any kind, or Nimpo, then it will not count towards building that invisible Bloody Rage meter. Yeah, UTs do not lead to even more UTs, so it no longer feeds into itself like Ninja Gaiden 2. And since higher modes require more points, it means UTs aren't easily obtainable like how they were in Ninja Gaiden 2's Master Ninja mode, given how much larger crowds were in that game. Again, it's another improvement to Ninja Gaiden 2's formula. And you want to know what else is cool about this new system? The longer we abstain from cashing out this max UT, the larger our multiplier will become. Which means it's a lot more rewarding to play with the fundamentals. And the best place to see that multiplier climb is during the grip and murder sections. So just hold on to that Bloody Rage for the entire fight, because with all these enemies doing nothing but red attacks, you can stack kills very quickly, which also builds a high multiplier, resulting even more karma with each still on bone chain. Now this is simple to do in these specific fights, but it's easily replicable by doing dilims with that tried and true katana string. And yeah, that's pretty damn cool. The potential value is a real nice incentive to not use the UT immediately, but to continue to play with the basics instead, because doing so will help us build insane amount of money for upgrades down the line. Now, just so you know, this bloody UT does not carry over between fights. So once you see the battle report show up, then yeah, the fight is over and you'll lose this buff. So you don't want to hang on to this for too long either. It's best to let it rip near the end of a fight to get the biggest payout possible. If only we knew how many enemies were in each encounter, but yeah. Cool thing is, the multiplier is still active as the UT is playing out. So any direct kill or even collateral damage will be given those bonus points as well. But once that UT is over, then everything gets reset. the invisible UT bar, and the multiplier. Yeah, that's Blade Rage. They made some really interesting changes to rein in those powerful UTs of Ninja Gaiden 2 and shifted the value away from them as well. We no longer get insane amount of money for spamming them, and they don't refill itself anymore either. It really has been flipped on its head, and for the better, I say. It's more about focusing on the fundamentals of D-limbs and risking it all for still on bones. For our sub-weapons, they've been cut down in size. By a bit, actually. So this time, Ryu only has basic shurikens and a bow. We no longer have the incendiaries, windmill, gun, still no smoke bombs, and yeah. So there's really nothing new to shurikens. By now, we should be very familiar of what these do. They interrupt, mark our next target, and shorten end lag. I've also went over the concept of shuriken canceling multiple times, so I won't go into it here. Just remember to do it after the new brief heavy holds, and after lights and certain enders, and all that. I will say this though, compared to past games, especially 2, I rarely use the light heavy string into shuriken cancel. It's a classic, but it's not the staple in this game anymore. Light forward light, or forward heavies have replaced it this time around. And another thing, shuriken cancels, ever since Ninja Gaiden Black, was only possible with one-handed weapons. But now, every weapon can use this tech. That's a pretty good improvement over the past games. Now for the bow. It still has its own dedicated button like the shurikens, so we've kept the quality of life changes from Sigma 2, which I'm a fan of. Even keeps the auto aim and infinite arrows of Sigma 2 as well. But it does have a new addition, and that's the focus shot. So as we're aiming down sights, click the right thumbstick to zoom in and slow down time. So now we can do some precision aiming. Now it's not just for show either, it actually opens up some fun quick kills. The earlier showcase is against the bikers. You can slowly chip them down with slide cancels, but if you focus aim and headshot the driver, then it's an instant kill. Now here's a tip to make this more consistent. Don't have the head directly in the middle of the reticle. They're moving targets after all, so by the time you fire away, they've already zoomed past your arrow. Instead, place their head at the top corners, lining up with those tiny openings. Doing this has made this a lot more easier, so hopefully that helps and makes sense. Then later on in the same stage, we see jetpacks. The auto aim really helps to track them down, so use that to your advantage. And from there, just focus, slightly move over to the thrusters, and fire away. There you go, they're gone in an instant. Then we see helicopters. They might seem scary, but just avoid their first volley of missiles by moving to the side. After that, we can set up our instant kill. So focus fire each set of missiles on both sides, then do a direct shot down the middle, which is typically where the auto aim goes. And yeah, this will take this thing down. I do like to slide cancel after each shot, cancels end lag and keeps us on the move if there's nearby enemies, for example. But yeah, that's the focus shot. It's easily the best bow mechanic this series has seen in a while, and that's because there's unique enemies to actually utilize it. Now they also reintroduced the bow UT from 2, and in my opinion it's better implemented, mainly because you're guaranteed value for actually taking the time to prep it. So in 2, it compares, but it was common for it to hit only one enemy even if they were overlapping. My original thought was to enlarge the hitbox with each charge level, but Razor's Edge will automatically target more than one enemy and will hit both of them with these multi-hitting arrows. Definitely the better idea. But even then, you don't use a bow UT very often. It's great for the Jeep auto-scrolling section, where you fight jetpacks and trucks during the final day. Other than that one encounter, it's completely forgettable most times. But here's what's not forgettable, and that's bow cancels. This piece of tech is extremely strong against far-off enemies in narrow spaces, because when done properly, we'll just mow them down with our borderline automatic weapon. So here's how it's done. Hold the left thumbstick in any direction you want, and point it up or forward, since it feels more comfortable, and will be less jarring between shots too, but yeah. From here, squeeze and hold L2 and R2, or the triggers. This will have you aim and fire in one quick motion. Now, once you fire that arrow, release all inputs besides the left thumbstick. continue to hold in any direction at all times. Then ADS to begin the loop. So, as soon as the arrow flies off, drop your aim, and quickly aim again so you can prep your next shot. Actually, kind of think of it as guard resetting in a way, but you're doing it with both triggers instead of one. But yeah, this will cancel all end lag and allow you to fire a lot sooner. But just keep in mind, try to press the left trigger first just slightly, because if you press the fire button first, Ryu would do the auto shot, which is not fast, and will drop your bow cancels, and there's a long recovery after it too, so we won't be able to start up again. And yeah, we don't want that. Onto defenses. Our guard works the same as before. It'll cover you entirely, so you'll snap to block any incoming attack. Counters are still here, of course, lights and heavy versions. But remember what we've learned from Gaiden Black? Counters only work against regular attack types, which means we can't block or counter unblockables, guard bricks, or guard crush attacks. Those are all here to prevent turtling. Which also means guard resets are still here and work the same as they did back then. So whenever your guard is broken, just release your guard button, then hold it again. That's it. This will let you guard a follow-up attack very soon after. But it's actually pretty rare to see in this game. Instead, use reversed wind. It's a lot easier to do because you just have to slide on reaction whenever your guard broken. Now this will be seen quite often, so slide away. Guard buffers are still here, and yeah, you'll be using these constantly as well. To simply put it, just hold guard at all times, especially during recovery, because if an attack happens to make contact, Ryu will instantly snap into that defensive position to block it. But again, only if you're guarding at all times. Yeah, this works during attack strings, enders, Zuna drop, after UTs, OTs, still on bone, and yeah. But just like Ninja Gaiden 2, the game is less about standing still waiting our turn, and more about getting a move on. And we can get that done with the game's new slide mechanic. So we went from a roll to a dash step to a slide. I really like how each game has their own defensive maneuver, which in turn reinforces the idea that these games play drastically different from one another. But yeah, not only does it have iframes, it actually has the hitbox too. Kind of reminded me of Contra Hardcore in that way. Not sure if it does damage like that game, if any. But the fact you can interrupt and stagger enemies with this is a really neat added utility. So it's not just to reposition, but to crowd control as well. What's really cool about this new slide is the fact that it's perfect filler. So the roll had end lag, and the dash step had an abrupt end as well. But the slide, on the other hand, it just lets you chain into other actions pretty smoothly, just seamlessly transferring between states to continue our non-stop pressure. Now this game isn't free of movement tech, and that's because we have slide cancels. It's definitely the fastest way to get from point A to point B, but it's pretty tricky to do. For me it was anyways. It's kind of like on landing jumps, how we need to reset the left thumbstick to neutral. Yeah, it's actually really weird to pull off. Maybe I'm just too used to on landing jumps, but the extra movement can come in handy, I'm sure. For wind path, it's still the same as before, so we should know how it works by now. Auto targets to the nearest enemy, interrupts, staggers, crowd control, great way to escape sticky situations, can chain these back to back, and has full iframes. Very fundamental stuff to Ninja Gaiden as a whole and should be used constantly. But it does have a neat change, and that's the fact we can control where we go. Yeah, it's now possible to aim where Ryu leaps with the left thumbstick. Might seem small, but this gives you a lot more freedom on how to reposition. That's a pretty smart change. Now Flying Swallow still has the improvements of 2. You can chain them back to back and leads to on landings. Just don't use on landing light attack with a katana because it's nowhere near as good as it once was. Instead, do a brief heavy hold into shuriken cancel or 360 heavy attack. It's actually one of our strongest approach options in general. That's because it's more likely to deal some solid damage, bloody, or delimb because of all those multi-hits. And since it's technically a heavy attack, it will automatically punish with the still on bone. But if it doesn't, it's still a great way to crowd control. Not only that, but it will lead into a launcher as well, which means we can go into an Azuna drop for even more damage. Speaking of which, That's the perfect segue into Zuno drops, which also received a pretty massive change. And it's the fact we can remove its recovery entirely to continue fighting with little to no downtime. Are you starting to see the trend here? The game really aimed to remove a lot of the end lag the series once had. So, it's possible to cancel that landing lag soon as you make contact with the floor. And the two most popular ways to go about this is with the windmill slash, aka the forward light attack, which links into a launcher, or a simple shuriken cancel will be fine too. You can also cancel with 360 heavy, which like I said before, is able to relaunch and set up another Izuna drop. If it happens to miss though, then fire your bow to make for a safer landing, then to an all-landing windmill slash for those iframes. Yeah, this game really lets you weave in and out of attacks like never before. Oh, and to be clear, it's possible to do those cancels on the bounce back as well, not just the initial impact. So the Izuna drop is no longer that risky option anymore. It has all the pros and none of the cons. Its biggest weakness now is that enemies need to be weakened beforehand, but we'll get into that soon enough. Oh, Gaiden Team Throw. How the mighty have fallen. I wasn't kidding when I said it can be removed from the game and it wouldn't make a difference. So what happened? Well, it's no longer spammable for once. Enemies tend to dodge it entirely. But even if you happen to connect it, landing a Gaiden Team Throw no longer guarantees a delim on wall splats. So the big improvement it once had was taken away. And again, it doesn't matter because there's less confined areas. So less walls around means less reason to even interact with this mechanic or the level design. So the Gaiden Team Throw isn't reliable as it once was, and the payoff isn't even worth the trouble either. It's honestly sort of pointless to use. Now the reason why it's so inconsistent is because of the new bloody system. So enemies begin in this healthy state, and until they're wounded, they'll have improved defenses, which is why they're more likely to block flying swallow, to evade launchers or Gaiden Team throws. That's why the go-to options from Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 are immediately less effective. You need to take the time to break these enemies down before we can use those once powerful tools. But by the time they're finally weakened, there's better options for us to do instead, like D-limbs and still on bone. So yeah, there's just too many steps to set up a Gaiden Team throw, and the reward doesn't match the effort. It actually might be the worst version in the main trilogy because of that. Kind of a bummer, but this game aims to flip the script on whatever was good in the past. It's what 2 did to 1, and the tradition continues here. And that's why I abandoned the classics. They just don't cut it here anymore. Guess you can see why light forward attacks rose to the top. Both light and heavy routes cover all possible situations that they dodge or block. It also does a great job at getting them into that bloody state, and so much more. But yeah, if you felt enemies were very hard to hit, well, these strings will solve all your problems. And again, don't pass up on light forward light. It's quick, and most importantly, shuriken cancelable, while the heavy versions are not. So I've been using this when there's a large crowd full of healthy enemies. That's because it keeps me safe while dealing a solid amount of damage. And then I'm able to move away and do something else. So don't rely solely on the light forward heavies. They can only do so much. Now there's no other place to set this up, so let's just squeeze it in here. And that's the level design. Now when compared to previous games, Razor's Edge has took a nosedive in this department, just becoming way too simplified. It's linear, which isn't the problem, it's just their formatting. They're either flat square rooms or narrow hallways with not much in between. There's just no interesting ways to interact with the environment through movement like previous games. Which sucks because Ryu is the fastest he's ever been, so it's a shame the level design doesn't put it to good use. Instead, we get these slow walking sections, and actual platforming has been replaced with these simple button props. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these kunai climbs at all. They're just too automated and extremely dull. And again, with Ryu's advanced movement, we should have bits of platforming to actually showcase that to some extent. But Razor's Edge removed all the verticality and interesting layouts seen in the first 2 games. Only unique thing are these waist-high covers. That's it. These are useful to separate yourself from the crowd and sort of force them to cluster together. NG2 did that as well, but in a lot more varied and interesting ways. So yeah, 3 just doesn't include its level design in your decision making whatsoever. Not to the same degree anyways. Now I saved this for last because, as cool as it is, it's not 100% necessary. And that's Cicada Surge. So at the cost of ki, you're able to cancel your grounded actions at any point to evade melee attacks or grabs with this full iframe teleport. Now it can't be done in the air, and it won't work against projectiles. Not his version anyways. But from here you're able to punish that attacking enemy with either a basic option, or with a still on bone if you evaded their red attack. But yeah, as long as you have ki, it's possible to remove the committal gameplay this series once had. But as I said before, that's sort of the trend we saw in 2 and of course 3. So if you want to play more reckless, then this will pull you out of those sticky situations. Now that I think about it, it's just the next evolution of Nimpo cancels. It requires ki and cancels many committal attacks, but Razor's Edge expands on those possibilities. So there you go. With a bit of ki and proper timing, you can cancel pretty much anything. Looking at the HUD, voila, it's been stripped back quite a bit. A little too simple in my opinion. Doesn't have much personality, but yeah. Health more or less works the same. We still have the regenerating HP of Ninja Gaiden 2, but the permanent damage is a lot more harsher than before. In Ninja Gaiden 2, it was pretty common to have enough gray health to restore most, if not your entire health bar. Well, it's not so forgiving in Razor's Edge. So if you make mistakes, which you will as a new player, will be carried over through multiple encounters. And since there's no more essence, no items either, we don't have the usual resources to recover HP. Doesn't mean we're left high and dry, however, because we do have 4 ways to heal in this game. So starting with the most common way, kills with Still on Bone. It's the game's main mechanic, so it'll be seen quite often. It won't regain a lot of health, however, but anything helps, right? Now even though it takes time to build up, but Nimpo will be your main form of healing. Just be sure to hit as many enemies as possible, and that's because the more damage you deal, the more health you'll get. Then the Safe Falcons. These show up after a few encounters, so you won't see them very often, but these are complete heals that also restore your permanent damage. But once you save, they fly away. So no more routing save points like Ninja Gaiden 2. The only thing close to it are the Crystal Skull challenges, so if you know where they are and you're in a bad shape, then I'd recommend you interact with them. Because win or lose, you'll be living with a full heal and some possible ki charge if you manage to take down a few enemies. So if you need to fill up on some resources, then here you go. But yeah, there's also meditation. This can heal and refill lost health. It's very risky to use as intended, however. Has a lot of startup, so you only use it outside of battles. But you can actually use it as a taunt, believe it or not, because it'll bait enemies into doing their red attack. Yeah, we're bringing back some Onimusha strats to force counters. Now as cool as it is, I never found much use for it. Think it's far more efficient to deal in with those light forward attacks, and then based on bones that way. And now for the most rarest form of healing, HP upgrades. Yeah, you never want to use these unless it's a very tough situation, and even then, sometimes it's best to stick it out. But yeah, these are basically the Life of the Thousand Gods of NG2. So not only will these increase our max HP, but they're also a full heal. We only get 5 of these throughout the entire game though, so I'd recommend to be extra stingy with these. Now, since it's our best heal, they should be rationed out very sparingly. Honestly, keep 2, maybe 3 for the final day. Which yeah, means we don't have much to work with for the rest of the game. Yeah, these require some strict routing. To make sure they don't go to waste, here's a few spots that you'll most likely use them. Or a good spot to use them anyways. The day 2 boss can be very messy. That's usually where I spend my first one at. Day 7 is the next one. Yeah, there's quite a gap there. But yeah, the dual tanks can be a pain. But we also have to fight a multi-phase boss immediately afterwards with whatever remaining health we have. So a full heal would be great going to that next fight. Then day 8 is where the rest go. It can be either during the multi-goddess fight, which only gets more spawns and higher difficulties. So yeah, that can be rough. Then right afterwards we fight Regent for the final time, and it's another situation where we go into a second boss fight with whatever health we have. So a heal during his fight can help us get a decent start in the next boss. And of course, try to have one for the first phase of the final boss at the very least. And yeah, healing is quite limited compared to 1 and especially 2. So it can be tough at times without essence and items like grains, Life of the Thousand Gods, and talisman to act as our safety net. For that reason alone, I think Razor's Edge is the least beginner-friendly game in the trilogy, because without items to lean back on, you're sort of required to master the mechanics and learn all the matchups on a deeper level. So if you want to play this game, then be ready to dig in deep, because it's sort of required. But to help ease things over, the game has quite a few checkpoints, so if or when you die, you won't be sent all the way back to your previous save. You'll most likely be sent to the start of the encounter instead, which is not too bad. Okay, onto key. Well, if you noticed, we no longer have key slots like before. It's been replaced by this meter. Now the size of the bar depends entirely on the equipped Nimpo. So instead of having a few orbs stocked up for future use, here we need to build up this meter every single time. And that's done by landing any basic attack, to performing OTs and chaining Cell on Bones, which give the most key buildup. But yeah, the new key system seems to answer the Ninja Gaiden 1 problem where you can just spam Nimpo like no tomorrow. We had multiple slots, stockpile of refills, and upgrades to get it all back just to mount everything in our path. Well, no longer. Now we have to manage this meter wisely. But since it's one of our most rare and substantial form of healing, you'll soon realize it's best to use as this emergency support tool. That or saving it for very specific encounters. Yeah, since it's a pretty rare thing to have, it's best to route out key usage. Yeah, most Nimpos are way too costly to throw out wherever. That's why they require some strict planning because of that. Well, unless you use a specific Nimpo, which will be Void. Its short meter, shortest one in the game, allows it to be refilled quite often, sometimes more than once per encounter. And its piercing capabilities allow it to deal enough damage to heal you fully, or almost fully with a single cast. It does require some precise manual aiming, but as long as you go to the nearest corner to both cluster and funnel them into a single line, then yeah, you'll completely decimate this entire room. It's also powerful enough to instant kill the more larger elite enemies in a single shot. This does not include alchemists, by the way, but it's still very effective. Now I know it doesn't have the auto aim of Inferno to get a guarantee hit, or the crowd control potential of Windblades, but Inferno can only hit a small handful of enemies. Yeah, the AoE damage is just awful in this game. And Windblades do not deal a whole lot of damage, which means no heals. It is interesting how it can lead to OTs or Still on Bones to regain ki, sort of like a self-sufficient battery. But our strings can do that for free, which also rebuilds our ki when jumped properly. But if we had Void equipped instead, then it would have been refilled multiple times, unlike the other Nimpos. So yeah, it's just hard to compete with the Void's constant uptime and extremely high healing potential. However, its greatest strength is also its only weakness, because there's just not enough meter to go around. So to use Void, you must ignore any meter-based techniques such as Falcon's Eye, Meditation, and Cicada Surge. Yeah, Void is great as a healer, but don't expect it to use it for anything else. Now, if you want to have a meter-heavy playstyle, then True Inferno will be good for you. It's quite expensive though, it will most likely be seen in higher modes in NZ+, but it provides a lot of meter for constant healing between fights with meditation and regular use of Cicada Surge. For upgrades, things have been completely overhauled, because how can we shop without essence, right? So instead of having Muramasa supply us with those goodies, we now have this new skill grid in its place, which includes the very basics oddly enough, so top priority should be Wind Path and Flying Swallow. Don't need to worry about getting Team Throw for reasons we went over earlier, so that's an easy pass. Do not buy Falcon's Eye. It slows down time as you fire in the air, which can have its moments, but you rarely have to do that. Not only that, but Falcon's Eye requires meter, and compared to the better meter-based mechanics, yeah, it's a massive waste to use it on this ability. So to avoid the headache of accidentally ruining your meter management, just don't buy it to begin with. After buying 2 or 3 things and skipping the rest, I just focus all my karma on maxing out my weapon of choice, and that's usually the katana. Yeah, it's finally back to being viable again. So definitely upgrade it this time because it's pretty damn good, especially when you gain access to the light Fort heavies. There's also triple light, triple heavy, which is good, and slide triple heavy. That's gonna be seen a lot. But of course, the extra damage, the extended SOB chains, And the third UT charge will be amazing to have too. Now, once we get Void and the ability to upgrade it, then yeah, max it out as soon as possible. Anyways, the new skill grid has a unique quirk or an annoyance that you must be aware of. So you won't have access to buy most of these options until you have collected a certain amount of golden scarabs. Yeah, it means you are required to collect every single one if you want access to more weapons, Nimpo, and most importantly, health upgrades. Now the key word here is access, not unlocking, meaning you won't get these outright. You still need to buy them with karma. Again, scarabs are here to expand the skill grid. Yeah, whatever you do, be sure to follow a collection guide on your very first playthrough. Because if you don't, you'll have a lot of karma lying around with nothing to spend it on. But once you found all 50, then you're done. Any scarab you collected will carry over to any difficulty, any mode, whether it be story or chapter challenge, or even character. The entire progression will be forever accessible going forward. Now you'll still get 5,000 karma for each one you collect, even on repeat playthroughs. So try to remember a few of them for some extra easy karma points. Not only that, but you will have a scarab multiplier applied at the result screen. So the more you have, the bigger the karma bonus. And with the ever-growing prices of each difficulty, these extra sources of karma will help give you a little jumping off point. When it comes to enemies, there's the basic humanoid ones like soldiers, terrorists, attack ninjas, spider ninjas, and so on. Now, same as Ninja Gaiden 2, there's no concrete counter to certain attacks or behaviors, just need to rely on the fundamentals from not standing around blocking, use your movement from slide, wind pass, flying swallow, and be sure to prep guard buffers at all times. That's pretty much it. And since they all operate under the bloody system, it's best to approach them with the same goal in mind. Let me land as many hits as possible. So very early on in the game, you can use the full light string or light forward lights. It's quick and keeps you on the move. Sure, it can cancelable like I said before. But as soon as you upgrade the katana to level 2, then yeah, be sure to toss in a few light forward heavies from time to time. It is a pretty consistent string to bloody, delimb, and set up your next still on bone. Use light forward lights for a more safer opener. Light forward heavies when they're a bit damaged. Slide heavies or slide heavy hold are great too. Brief heavy holds in general are great, especially when followed up with shuriken cancels, of course. And wind run into online 360 heavy is great against their matchups as well. We're just approaching with iframes to do a lot of damage and kind of starts our Azuna drop loops. Yeah, that's really all you need. I will say this though, enemies still use the ticket system, which means they take turns as they always have. So if you see that single enemy rushing you down, then yeah, he's probably going to attack with the basic move. While the bystanders are more likely to catch your potential openings with those red attacks. So they still have the initiator and support roles since Ninja Gaiden 1, which is cool. Then shields. These guys will shut down your lights. So if you remember what we did against blocking enemy in Ninja Gaiden 1, then yeah, it's time to use those heavy attacks instead. So usually I would use slide heavy hold, gets me in while allowing me to follow up as they're staggered, which will most likely be a UT since they're staggered. But if you can't get the full charge out, they do become regular soldiers afterwards, so it's back to the basics. Which honestly, if you ever see a regular soldier, the ones with those dual blades, I like to slide heavy hold. It staggers and near guarantees a level 1 UT. You can also flying swallow to knock them off balance as well, and then go into an on-landing heavy hold and yeah. Now you really want to prioritize these guys, and that's because they can interrupt your chain anything sooner. So it's a good idea to disarm them very early on. Kind of reminded me of Arkham Knight in that way. Now this is what I wanted to see more from Ninja Gaiden 2, some sort of counterplay from the enemies. I want them to actually put up roadblocks for us to work around. Ninja Gaiden Black did that so well and should be the standard for enemy design in general. So I'm glad we're seeing that make a return in this game. For these assassins, or the guys in berets, they're a lot more agile and quick to punish you. So if you weren't on the move before, then you will be now. Especially to avoid their very fast, gap closing red attacks. And of course, you need to break them down first because of the bloody system. But at this point of the game, you should definitely have the level 2 katana by now. So use those improved strings. But if not, I really like to use wind path and prep an on-landing UT. is still able to charge extremely fast, like Ninja Gaiden 2, so we're most likely able to get the level 1 UT out before they recover. Very straightforward stuff. Sometimes I'll slide heavy hold and release once I have that UT ready. Or you can just release early, shuriken cancel, and keep moving. And yeah, you gotta be quick to adapt, like Ninja Gaiden 2. Like I said earlier, these guys on Ultimate Ninja will begin to end your still on Bone Chain a lot shorter. Reminds me of how Ninja Gaiden Black would add even more parry happy enemies on higher modes, or give them new attack properties to take into account. And this is what Ninja Gaiden 2 is missing, enemies that kept you adapting and forming new strategies, especially on higher modes. Ghosts, as the name implies, are invisible enemies. They don't really do much besides toss grenades, which do have a fuse, so don't worry, it won't be pure insanity to fight these guys. But all you need to do is toss a single shuriken. Not only will it auto-target the nearest one for us, but it will expose them, as well as stun them for long enough to make our approach. It can be a launcher into a Zuno drop, or a slide heavy hold. But as of late, my favorite follow-up is to wind run, then on landing 360 heavy. The shuriken targets them, and the wind run will do the same with iframes. And then yeah, 360 heavy spin will most likely launch them. Seems to work just fine and starts a loop as well. But yeah, since they're very passive, for the most part, it's even possible to stand around and charge that UT as well. They don't bother you too much. If they do decide to mess with you, just release early and shuriken cancel. But like I said, that's pretty rare. So you'll most likely reach the first tier with these quick charge times. And once you do, let it rip. You'll auto target and most likely kill them all in one go. Then do it again. Mages are more or less the same. They shoot a fireball or summon a flame geyser right beneath you. Both have an enormous amount of startup, so you can easily flank swallow, wind path, or slide in to close the gap, and follow up with an Uzuno drop. They also do the same burrow leap attack, so keep an eye out for the little waves on the ground. They don't grab as much as 2. They usually do this rising twirl attack, but just play it safe and keep your distance, then punish with an Uzuno drop. Pretty straightforward. Now, while NG2 had an abundance of IS ninjas to keep it moving, Razor's Edge has quite a few rocket launchers. Can be a problem if you're not already used to the franchise's constant movement, so as long as you weren't standing still being an easy target, then these guys won't be any trouble. But here's a nice quality of life feature to make them easy to clear out. And that's how the bow's auto-aim will prioritize far off ranged enemies. Yeah, it'll completely ignore any melee-based threats and go for the projectile-based targets instead. And lucky for us, they have super low health, so a single arrow should finish the job. Yeah, just follow the game's lead and be sure to get rid of them as soon as possible. Just be sure to create some space before aiming though. That initial movement will avoid the surrounding enemies and dodge any incoming projectiles. Now this is how Ninja Gaiden 2 should have made their Quetzalcoatls. Yeah, it's really good to have these sort of support-based enemies to add some target prioritization, but those things were way too tanky for their own good in NG2. While Razor's Edge remembers to have short time to kill on every enemy type, not just a select few. Dogs are still hyper aggressive and quick to chip you down, so fast in fact they can counter hit your light attacks, so keep your distance, slide towards them, and do light into heavy. Then do a full aerial light combo. That's it. The Ender has insane crowd control potential to make for a safer landing. Just be sure to prep a guard buffer and slide away to start the loop again. Now for Salsis Fiends, they're extremely evasive and very aggressive with their quick multi-hitting attacks. So they'll always approach you swinging, but will most likely dodge if you attempt to attack first. Because of that, I say let them. The plan here is to use their reckless approach against them. So stand there and guard, and once they're in your bubble, do a light counter with the katana. This has a very good track record at dealing them, and since they're usually crowded together, the iframes from counter will make this safe to do, and possibly delim multiple enemies while you're at it. From here, be quick to OT any delimbed enemy, because unlike regular humans that are delimbed, these things are even more aggressive once delimbed, getting the speed boost to beeline towards you in the hopes to take you down with them. So yeah, target the delimbed ones as quick as possible. Now as you perform the OT, be sure to heavy hold as you exit. You should be doing that in general, but especially against these guys. And that's because they have a very unique quirk about their AI. So whenever you prep a charge, you have a really high chance to perform a red attack. You can even be across the room and they'll still do a red attack in response, which means we can bait a Still on Bone and simply release that heavy attack to punish them, beginning this massive chain. Now they do have to be in a neutral state for this to work though, so if they're in startup or already attacking, release the heavy early and Shuriken cancel to quickly get out of the way. Now on to gorillas. These guys are bullies, so they hit hard and have hyper armor. But just like the dinos from 1, just avoid their attack and then land your guaranteed punish right after. So look out for this overhead slam or this 3-hit combo. Either way, getting close and swing away. But if you attack when it's not your turn, then yeah, you'll be punished. Unless you have Cicada Surge, of course. Anyways, after they recover, I keep attacking to force them to block, in which case they will parry you, because continuing to hit their guard will force them to retaliate with the counter attack. You know how enemies in God Hand will break out and cut your combo short? Yeah, similar concept here. So after the gorilla breaks free, just react and slide away, because it can do a regular swipe or toss out a red attack. And that's what we're waiting for. And once you land that Still on Bone, note that you can't begin a chain. It's just a one and done deal. And there is a chance it won't instant kill either. They'll just be delimbed instead. Don't panic, just quickly move in and finish the job with an OT. So it might as well be an instant kill. So yeah, the strategy is just to mash lights. They're fast, have a short recovery, and will force them to react a whole lot sooner rather than later. Then snakes. In comparison, these guys like to hang back a little bit, so watch out for their 2-hit punches, sweeps, or this overhead tail slam. Very simple patterns. But if you keep your distance, it's easy to react, slide past their attacks, and punish. They're more squirmy, however, so instead of standing their ground like gorillas, these things will back away after every 2 hits that you land, which means they'll escape with ease if you continue mashing. Well, to make those few hits count, I pretty much only use heavy attacks. Then I use their AI against them to trap them into this sort of loop. So I'll slide into heavy, wait there as a guard just to see what they'll do, then continue to follow them. Do this long enough and they'll be separated from the group. And this is a chance to throw out the light forward heavies if you're feeling lucky. A little more risky, but the range and tracking can help shut them down. And sometimes I like to do light, heavy. That seems to work as well. Now here's the fun part. The game really likes to pair these two together. So it makes sense why their playstyles and weaknesses are exactly opposite of one another. It's because they are meant to complement each other on the battlefield. That's just action game design 101. Now I could be crazy, but it seems too much of a coincidence not to be true. So now it's about finding our opportunities to strike, or make our own with Wind Path and onlining UTs, or with Cicada Surge, which I think shines the best in these fights since they tend to overlap their attacks, more than any other enemies anyways. There's actually one more enemy amongst them, and that's the homunculus. They're slow, but there's power in numbers. So as they slowly march towards you, they'll leap to pin you down, which gives everyone else the chance to move in as well. I like these guys for the same reasons why I like Faults in DMC4, and that's because they punish static behavior. So unless you want to get grabbed, yeah, you better get a move on. But alright, imps made a return, and they're very simple. Just wait for them to burrow, and that's because they'll leap out with this grab for us to Still on Bone. Or it'll be a red forward leap to Still on Bone as well. That's it. It's extremely common for them to set things up for us. So just be a little patient. Now you do not want to take your time with Vangals. So they have all the same attacks from 2. The Flame Breath, the double ground pound, and the most dangerous move, the far-reaching dive. Now since the limbs are less frequent because of the bloody system, right? These guys have also become more resilient. So no more instant D-limbs. Instead, they're more like red dinos, meaning attacking out of turn will be met with hyper armor. But it's tough to play that react, evade, and punish game with these guys, and that's because they are usually closely grouped up with other enemies. So instead, it's a really good idea to use Wind Path and especially Flying Swallow. And that's because it will stun them for quite a bit, so long in fact that you can do another one. Yeah, as you can tell, it sort of loops into itself, but you can also land whatever combo you want. So if you have the opening, I like to do triple light, triple heavy, longer string, but if no one's nearby then it's super effective. But if you need something a little quicker, I do like to do light, light, forward, light, heavy. Very fast and pretty decent job at limbing as well. But again, it's kind of risky to stand there and attack them because another Vankalf is about to dive you. So if you have to, slide, run, flank swallow, slide, repeat. It's the best way to fight a crowd of them because of all the iframes we're chaining. Magnafiends. Okay, they start out as this teleporting drone that'll sweep the floor with their beam. And similar to Pazu from Ninja Gaiden 1, there's some time before exploding. So in this current form, they're basically a stage hazard. They stay on the move and watch out for your positioning for the time being. Now once the crowd is clear, it's time to deal with this thing. All you need to do is shoot this gem twice. But once you do, it'll drop down as this Reaper Spider Crab. Now I know they're scary looking, but they're straightforward enough. For example, getting good at slide jumping into on landing in front of them is a pretty good strategy. So if you can manage to position yourself in front of them and early enough to prep a heavy hold before they're active, then yeah, you'll bait out a red attack. Just need to release on reaction and go from there. Now if things don't work out, just be patient. Hang around him and wait for the red attack. During this time, I'll just slide into wind run, then flying swallow to chain iframes to avoid any attack that isn't the red one. But that's it. Save these guys for last so you can take your time. And here it is, the Alchemist. You know what? I'll always defend these guys because to me, they're actually a very well designed enemy. Well, more like mini bosses, but yeah. That's a shocker to hear, I'm sure, because I know they have a reputation. But it wouldn't be like me to not have a hot take in these videos, right? Okay, they have a very strong defensive game, so they're pretty consistent at dodging your attacks, or blocking in this case, because they have the shield to deny some of your attacks. And you know they're powered up by having those glowing hands. Anyway, so their shield is a powerful barrier we need to break down, because we can't do much otherwise. While light attacks won't work because they'll just bounce off, the heavy attacks is where they crumble. Now we can go about doing that in a few ways. It can be running heavy, rarely used it but it's an option, slide heavy, which is my go-to attack, or flying swallow. Now no matter which route you follow, breaking their guard will knock them off balance, briefly stunning them long enough to land a guaranteed punish. But not a long one, mind you, because you're allowed to land just one attack before they escape. So to make this first attack count, it's a good idea to follow up with forward heavy into a Zuna drop. Not bad. But for me, I like to use ultimate techniques instead, because the potential can be a lot more damaging. So you can prep those by doing flying swallow into on landings, but I like to avoid that entire aerial downtime from the bounce up and all that. So that's why I like to do slide heavy hold instead. It means I have more time to prep a level 1 charge at the very least. Maybe more if things line up. Now, as you charge, don't be too trigger happy. Because yes, they can attempt a grab, so when you see arms spread out with those red hands, then yeah, release early to interrupt them. And remember, be sure to shuriken cancel if you had to do that. But okay, after the shield is broken and we begin charging, there's 3 options we can see from that staggered enemy or from nearby alchemist. For one, the grab, right? But the next 2 are what we are hoping for. So they will either kneel down and attempt to recharge that shield. This takes quite a long time and it's possible to get a level 3 UT, which is also the case for the projectile attack. It takes just as long as rebuilding that shield, having this enormous windup. And seeing that in general is a good thing because they just stand still and can't even keep up because their range of motion is pretty horrendous. So go anywhere besides the front to get your free charge. But anyways, after you do this damaging multi-hitting attack, back off, because there isn't just one of these guys, there's a group of them. So I'll leave that guy alone to recover and use this moment to find my next target. For one, it keeps us moving. Don't want to hyper focus one guy when there's a few more waiting to attack. For reason 2, it's easier to focus shielded enemies over broken ones, and we'll go into why in a bit. And 3, the guy from earlier will be too preoccupied rebuilding that shield. So it'll be one less factor to worry about as we're off fighting the next alchemist. And since we're far away, they'll most likely prep that projectile once they're recovered, which also has a long startup. So yeah, that's the loop. Well, I attempt to do that anyways. These fights have a lot of moving parts and requires non-stop adaptation, which I like. Okay, once it's down to just one enemy, our approach will be a little different, and that's because we're going to fight them as soon as we land that initial UT. So, once their shield is gone, they'll become more evasive, just dodging everything. And if you continue to mash, then yeah, you'll be punished. But their counterattacks are not random, and neither is their behavior. So here's the plan. Just attack once. We do this to force a reaction, which can be one of two things. It'll either be this high jump slam, or he'll dodge back, have a bit of delay, then rush you down with his command grab. The timing and the distance is always the same, so be sure to learn it. And you know what? These are both punishable. To properly react to either Q, slide out of the way, and come back with a slide heavy hold. This will cause a long enough stagger to prep our next UT. And again, be sure to pay close attention before releasing too soon. You want to get the biggest punish possible. Now, to be clear, it is possible to continue fighting them head on when there's multiple enemies nearby still. You just need to pick your moments as you see fit. That's where the adaptation comes into play. So yeah, even though their defensive game is their strength, it's also their biggest weakness. And once you know how their shield works, what attacks they're weak to, how to follow up once they're broken, and how to punish their recharge, things start to make sense. Everything is fair, reactable, and deterministic, with a bit of risk reward sprinkled on top because charging too long will reveal the counter hit system. So yeah, that's still here. Now, while they get hard countered by UT spam, it's more nuanced than that. The fights require a lot of situational awareness and proficient crowd control. So it's best to know where the outlier is to have that easier one-on-one fight away from everyone else. Yes, that means there's an element of enemy prioritization as well. You also need to keep track of their current state, because that drastically affects your game plan. You can either play patiently and go for the shield breaks, or keep up the pressure to set up that bait and punish situation. Honestly, you have way more power than you think on how things will play out. So make them follow your lead because you control the fight. Yeah, those are the alchemists. They're just a well-designed enemy from top to bottom. Now there is a sword variant. These guys, I'm somewhat lost on how to approach them still. But from what I found, it seems like light, forward light, heavy is pretty good. Sort of staggers them and sets a pretty decent loop. So just do the string, guard buffer if you have to, slide away and repeat. Seems to do fine. And you can also do the light, forward heavies for a more powerful but riskier alternative. But yeah, the enemy roster has seen a massive improvement this time around. There's actual enemy composition, target prioritization, and has a better blend of aggressive and defensive plays. And they finally have unique strengths that present some actual counterplay. Now they aren't up there with Ninja Gaiden Black, but it made a giant step in the right direction, especially when compared to Ninja Gaiden 2. It's time for the bosses. So up first, the Spider Tank. As you'd expect, it's armed with some serious firepower. From a turret up top, a cannon in the middle, and a flamethrower in front. So to avoid these, just stay on the move. And lucky for us, we want to make our way around this thing to chop off each leg. Now the two in front can't be destroyed, so just leave it be. But for the rest, yeah, we need to cut them in two. In order to do that, we must destroy that protective layer each and every time. So keep slide jumping to avoid the machine gun and the occasional set of missiles. Now don't attack just yet. Right now we are waiting for the cannon to swivel in our direction, then you'll hear a sound cue and finally the barrel will begin to glow. Look out for those tails because it's about to fire away soon after. Once avoided, now it's our chance to make our move. And I like to use light forward lights. Not only is it quick, but there's tracking teleports, which helps stay on target since this boss likes to keep moving. Then repeat that string one more time before resetting back to neutral. So yeah, the cannon basically shoots in set intervals, and we use that opening to get in a few hits pretty safe and reliably. Now eventually we'll destroy the outer armor and go into the still on bone QTE. Do not mash. You actually want to fail this on purpose, because severing that first limb too early will only make things more complicated. That's because it'll gain access to this unblockable EMP blast that aims to get you away. And on higher difficulties, this will only spawn in more rocket launchers too. Yeah, it can be very headache inducing to say the least. So to prevent these extra defenses from even showing up, dispel it and move on to the next. This will keep its behavior pretty tame and definitely more manageable. Now when circling the tank, try to avoid crossing paths with that flamethrower. It does quite a lot of damage. So when you're about to reach the front, just turn around. Then yeah, once the cannon goes off, you can slide towards the leg and get things started. Now, once everything is exposed, it's time to mass steal him in one foul swoop. But here's the thing, after each steal on bone, you cannot just beeline to the next one and instantly SOB again. You have to wait till the last limb fully explodes and disappears. So for me, I sort of do this triangle movement. I slide jump out at a diagonal, then slide jump towards the next leg. Not only does it avoid the explosion from the leg, the gunshots, the missiles, and so on, but it's the perfect amount of time until we can do our next steal on bone. Yeah, slide out, then slide back in with an on-landing light attack to safely remove each leg before things get really hairy. Then once they're all delimb, this latch opens up to expose its core, so make your way behind it and land a finishing blow. Next up is our rival of the game, Regents of the Mask. Since it's our very first encounter with him, things start out very straightforward. So, stand still, hold guard, and wait. Once you block his first attacks, slide out to avoid the follow-up, and do light, light, heavy. Then repeat. Yeah, majority of this phase is just him approaching with that same combo. Not more complicated than that. Now the halfway mark, we clash swords, then we take this fight outside. From here, don't do anything besides avoid his opening grab. He will always attempt this move at the start, so watch out. Usually I slide into a wind run to chain a few iframes. Okay, now it's time to play that bait and punish game. And the string we're looking for is different this time too. So as we keep our distance, he will still approach with the 2 swipes. But he will finally add an ender. So whenever you see this diagonal leap attack, it's punishable. And if you see the singular thrust having him lunge forward, that's punishable as well, but it's a little more riskier to go for since he does have a sneaky 4th attack. So I kind of leave that one be. But yeah, keep your distance for now, let him approach, block that first hit, slide away this time, then wait. This should avoid the second attack, but also creates that space to see and react to those potential enders. Now I say potential because he may not do it, or add some really long delay before tossing these out. But yeah, after you see that diagonal ender, go ahead and punish with light, light, heavy. There's also a grab, but this guarding the first attack to sliding away tactic should cover most situations here. And now, the helicopter. I feel like this might be a lot of people's first difficulty spike. I know it was for me back then, but yeah. Similar to NGB, this fight is focused on the bow. Now conceptually, this boss is perfectly fine, since it's about avoiding its projectiles, which means we need to consider our positioning, being in constant motion, and it even puts focus on a key part of our kit, which I like. However, this game still didn't learn from Ninja Gaiden 2's mistakes and forgot what made these sort of bosses work in the past, and that's the short time to kill. In Ninja Gaiden Black, these things went down pretty quick, but Ninja Gaiden 2 and Razor's Edge still have examples of these pretty spongy projectile based bosses, so it just takes forever in comparison, instead of being this short but intense skill check like one. And that's the golden rule for boss design in general. Alright, start this fight by guarding, then slide underneath. It avoids the initial low sweep, and then from there just ADS and fire away. Now I highly recommend you learn any form of bow cancels. We just need to deal a lot of damage as fast as possible, because this health bar, even on normal, can be a bit much. Luckily, there's auto aim, so that isn't being tested here like in the first game. Just your cancels, honestly. So let it auto target those turbines and slowly chip away at them. Eventually, we'll destroy one. And once we do, we are then forced to falcon dive off this platform and go onto its wing. For this and many other turret sections throughout the game, I always slide, run, and flying swallow. Change iframes as I quickly close the gap. Now that we're close, all you need to do is toss out one light attack into shuriken cancel. That's it. This unlocks the turret for an easy loop. So keep it up until we do this finishing QTE. For this second part, it'll add carpet bombs, and you can tell it's about to do this when the auto aim drops. So react to that cue and go to the far end. Now this fight in general will always be hectic and sort of pushes for a reckless playstyle. It's why I usually buy my first health upgrade here. Yeah, just try your best to save until the very end because there is a few checkpoints in this fight. So hold out until it's really bad. Yeah, now that the second part is done, we'll Falcon Dive for a second time. So do the usual setup. But this one's a little different because we have to hang on to the wing for a little bit, dodge a few turret shots, and yeah. Once you get control, just wait a bit and shoot down the jetpacks, and then once they've been cleared out, go ahead and move in and start the loop before we drop off to the final platform. For this last section, backup is added. Not for us, but for the boss. Yeah, it can be taxing dealing with the helicopter and the waves of jetpacks. But to make things easier, just rely on the focus aim for every shot. So, let the auto aim do its job by pointing us in the right direction, and since it'll prioritize those flyers over the boss, then yeah, use that to your advantage to quickly take them out of the fight. But if there's none to be found, that's fine too, because we'll get a free shot on those turbines. Yeah, just let the auto aim prioritize the flyers, slow down time, instant kill, slide away, and repeat. It's sort of a slow but safe strategy here. Keeps us on the move, and guarantees we'll land that shot no matter what the target might be. Okay, since Ayane is mandatory in Razor's Edge, we'll go over her bosses as well. So her first fight is up against this Alchemist trio. Alright, as soon as the fight begins, slide jump forward and prep an on-landing UT. Then release once you reach that level 1 charge. And oh yeah, be sure to upgrade your weapon at least once before this fight begins. That extra damage will really help a lot. And lucky for her, she has cheaper prices compared to Ryu. So it'll be easier to grab those extra goodies too, including those HP upgrades. But with only 2 stages with even fewer major fights, there's less of a reason to be buying health upgrades in general, especially during her first day. So for now, just hold on to them until the very end. Slide jump and do that UT. Once it ends, just do light, brief, heavy hold, slide away, repeat. Her attacks are really fast and that brief charge deals solid damage with complete hyper armor. So just keep this up as long as you can. Even light, heavy hold seems to be good too. But yeah, once things get a bit hectic, just use Nimpo. And if things get really bad, use 1 health upgrade. That should be more than enough to get you by. Speaking of which, that's her entire strategy for every encounter. Do light, heavy hold. This will solve all your problems because it covers every single possible situation. So those initial lights are great at delimbing, and that final brief heavy charge will link into an OT. Or the final heavy will be the delim, so just getting close and OT. If not, the final heavy will either guard break or knock down. In that case, just slide away and use this string on someone else. And once you land that OT, be sure to heavy hold as you exit and immediately let it go. This heavy attack has insane reach, tracks, gives hyper armor, has a high chance to delim, guard breaks, knockdowns, crowd controls, can chain back-to-back OTs, punish those red attacks with Stay on Bone, and will become an instant UT if you have Bloody Rage. So yeah, light, heavy hold will do it all and allows you to keep this pressure going. It is a very flowchart heavy playstyle, but damn it does it work and pretty optimal. But now back to Ryu. And he has to go toe to toe with the T-Rex. Now you don't have to do this, but it is possible to open this fight by slide jumping towards him and get in close to start hacking at those ankles. Again, this isn't needed, but you'll definitely get a head start on the fight. So yeah, you can approach with slide heavy string, then just stand there mashing heavy attacks until he breaks out. Once it does, be aware of its rush down attack, so just keep an eye out and slide away. Now that will be his main attack for the rest of the fight, just running back and forth. So keep sliding. but try your best to stay close enough at the same time. That's because it'll eventually trip, which is our chance to land a few more hits. Just be careful because it does send out this dust shockwave that can hit you. But I just slide into wind run to chain iframes as I make my way in safely. From there, I go into that running state and mash triple heavy, which does require a maxed out level 3 katana, so be sure to have that if you want to do this. But yeah, once it ends, just slide jump away to reset back to neutral. That's pretty much it. Just keep this up until his lower body transforms into metal. And since it's become fully armored, we must attack the head from here on out. The same stuff applies though. Avoid the rush, he trips, slide into wind run to chain iframes, then running mash heavy. But here's the thing, since there's more travel time to reach the front, be sure to prep a guard buffer because he'll most likely recover earlier than expected. It's better to take a bit of guard crush damage instead of a direct hit. You can also try to slide jump into flying swallow to get away as well. Now there is a second portion to this fight. We do a very simple chase sequence before dropping into another arena. Same exact game plan as before, but no slide jumping. Apparently it prevents him from doing even more of these back and forth charges, weirdly enough, so it's best to stay grounded. Just like Genshin before him, we have to rematch this guy a handful of times. But the plan here is to stand still, guard, and react. Pretty simple. Now, even though the strategy is the same as before, the options we're looking for are a bit different. Okay, it'll either be this forward leap. He'll throw this out in neutral, so be ready for that. He recovers pretty quick though, so just do a slide single heavy. Now the main thing you'll see are these upward slashes. Pretty hard to miss, so back away far enough to avoid the ender. Now don't do anything just yet, because he'll back away and do this piercing attack. The timing and distance is always the same. So if he happens to go off screen, then no worries. As long as you can anticipate the timing, you'll be fine. So yeah, just try to follow him and catch the end lag with a single slide heavy. Any more than that will have him block it. Now he does still have that 3-hit combo. So after guarding 2 attacks, slide out of the way and punish him after that ender with a slide triple heavy. That's not all, because he will toss out this command grab to keep us guessing as well. Also, if the first attack happens to guard break, he will most likely do a grab as well. So just slide away to avoid it. Now, do not punish this, and that's because he can add a sneaky follow-up. So if he does that second grab, then slide towards him and go in for the punish with slide triple heavy. Now he can attempt to grab in neutral, so just be prepared and follow the same steps. Yeah, this fight's all about being patient and quick reactions. Stand still, block 2 hits at most, slide away, and that should cover most of his options. For Prototype Goddess, her fight strikes the right balance a lot of bosses to try to aim for. She can deal some big damage, but so can we. And that right there makes this fight short, sweet, and intense. Okay, as soon as the fight begins, slide forward to evade it, press light, heavy hold, which has us fly over her, then do an on-landing heavy charge. Now hold it there because being behind her will bait out a grab every time, which means consistent still on bones. So charge and release on reaction. And as you can tell, yeah, does some damage. From there, she'll just back off, so wait for her to make the first move. From there, just slide through it for the iframes and then mash lights. Those attacks won't do much damage, but we do it to force her into regenerating those limbs a lot sooner. Now she does have 3 different sets of limbs, each with their own unique attacks, but to keep things real simple, just stay in that mid-range, wait for her to attack, slide once, and go into that light attack heavy hold setup. This will work for all 3 forms. Just know the timing on the initial slide will vary depending on her opening attack, but at least everything is clearly telegraphed and reactable, so you should be fine. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Dodge your first attack, you can even block it too if you want, and trap her into these massive punishes. This loop is insanely powerful and will move things along pretty quick. There is a second phase, but like the T-Rex fight before her, we'll just go into a different room to do the exact same strategy. So stick to the plan. I will say this though, try to avoid fighting really close to the walls. It seems to always mess things up. So yeah, keep that in mind. And look who makes another return. So Baba here has a set piece heavy fight. meaning it's pretty simple and more about the spectacle. Alright, as soon as the fight begins, enemies will spawn in, but I use that time to charge a level 1 UT at the very least. Now once everyone's been cleared out, we can finally attack this glowing pimple or wart. So here's what to do. Toss out triple light, triple heavy. It's a longer string but it's very damaging. Then do it again, but you'll notice her hand is prepping to swat you away. Now it's intended to shoot her hand with the bow, but we're just going to ignore that. It's just a suggestion to us. Because if you do a heavy hold during that second string, you can charge a UT and use those iframes to avoid his slam while doing damage. So keep it held until she's about to squash you, then release. Now once it ends, you still have complete control, so just mash heavies and we'll quickly finish this first part. Next we do a few kunai climbs, stuff happens, and then we falcon dive onto this final section. Then once you land, instantly cast void to hit that next wart in front of you. This will give us a decent head start, but if you don't have the meter, then it's totally fine. And yeah, it's another wave based fight, so clear them out so we can attack that pimple with the same string as before. Don't need any heavy holds this time either, just keep repeating it until we can. She'll toss out some projectiles that may or may not hit you, but just ignore them and just keep mashing the string. Next up is Evil Ryu. So the classic doppelganger fight has made a return in some way. Now the first phase is very simple, just stand your ground and hold guard. Once he's close, be ready to heavy counter into his unit drop. Then repeat, stand there, hold guard, and wait for him to approach. It really is that simple. Just don't get too trigger happy, because he'll punish you with his very own unit drop instead. Yeah, even though he is clearly hardwired to do the same exact approach, try to time that counter a bit carefully. Because if you do it properly, yeah, it basically locks him into a loop. But that's just the beginning. So in phase 2, he will now switch between the katana, claws, and scythe. Yeah, there's more on the fly adaptation from this guy. But to make things simple, most of the fight will be us running or sliding around the arena as we wait for specific attacks. You know, the usual. So for the Dragon Sword, you can treat him like regen. So stand still, guard, block the first 2 attacks, wait a tiny bit before sliding, and then punish with the slide triple heavy. Then yeah, stand there and do it again. It might require some guard resets and reverse wins to escape the guard breaks, but this will make quick work of him if he decides to use a Dragon Sword on you. Oh, if he does the classic heavy slam, then that's also punishable. So slide triple heavy it is. But that's not all, because he can also UT. Now, as we know from years of using the Dragon Sword ourselves, its UT range is pitiful. So a single slide can avoid with ease, and yeah, just keep a little bit of distance and then go in to land the Still on Bone. Now, every time we punish him with Still on Bones, he'll jump away. So let's use that time to immediately buffer a UT as soon as possible. Just hold it and release when he's close. Once it ends though, just slide jump away and keep the distance like before. Now the claws. These are very scary up close, but like I said, we're just going to keep our distance. Now being this far will bait out the famous forward heavy, so pay attention for that low sweep and punish with slide triple heavy. Also, since his range is pretty short, you can honestly just jog out of his reach, so no need to spam slides as we wait for our moment to strike. Besides that, he seems to swap off this weapon the fastest since we're too far away most times. And finally, the scythe. It's by far the most dangerous weapon, but it's also the one we want to see the most. Alright, he has a lot more potential attacks with this one that are also punishable. So keep the distance of course, because this weapon has by far the furthest range of the 3. And just like the claws, Clone Ryu will also do the scythe forward Y from Ninja Gaiden 2. It's very damaging, but it's clearly telegraphed. But yeah, whenever you see that grab, punish with slide triple heavy. He also has this aerial boomerang toss. You can evade, block, or even get hit honestly, and you will still have enough time to punish it with slide triple heavy. Okay, for the attack that we really want to see is his very own UT. And again, it's because it's possible to still unbone it, dealing some good damage. But as you remember from Ninja Gaiden 2, this has crazy reach. So to avoid it while also getting in close, just do slide into Wind Run. Gives us a ton of iframes and it'll place us behind him 9 times out of 10. Then yeah, it's an easy still on bone punish. But we're not done yet because, like I said, be sure to exit the animation by prepping a level 1 UT. He'll always jump away, so we're giving this easy follow-up. So keep it held, then release when he's close. That's basically it. Keep this going until he decides to use Nimpo. Now this isn't random, however. He will always do this once there's about 20% health remaining. But to avoid it, just slide Run into Flying Swallow. We're just chaining a ton of iframes to be as safe as possible, while also pointing us in the right direction. Then slide Triple Heavy now that you're safely behind him. Or you can use your Void against his, whichever works for you. And that's Doppelganger, aka Piganos. This is easily one of the best bosses in the series, and I'm glad this classic trope made a return after being absent in Ninja Gaiden 2's campaign. Okay, back to Ayane. This is her second and final day, which means you shouldn't hold back from being a little reckless, since we have a lot more health upgrades to lean back on. Speaking of which, be sure to buy Counter and Flying Swallow before diving in. This will really help in this boss fight and the previous waves leading up to him as well. So definitely get those. Okay, to start things off, just circle around the crowd from the outside. Right now we're kiting those outgrowth enemies, which will usually be the gorilla and snake. So as they're chasing us, try to find the far off one. If they're hanging back shooting projectiles, then that's our target. That's because they're isolated and standing still for us to land an easy attack. Yeah, it's time to make our move once spotted. Now as you approach, do the usual slide Run into Flying Swallow. It'll leave the elders behind and allow you to quickly close the gap with iframes. But here's the thing, there's a good chance she'll block our Flying Swallow. And well, that's not exactly a bad thing, because it'll bounce us up and behind this goddess. And from what we learned before, this will bait out their red attack, each and every time. So, be sure to set up the on-landing charge attack and release on reaction. But it doesn't end there, because she will attempt to kick us soon after. Now since they're just regular attacks, it means they're counterable. So stand your ground and be ready to light counter those kicks. And keep it up as long as possible. You have iframes on counters, so you'll be fine. But once it starts to get a little too crowded, then yeah, back away to reset. From here, I just keep this up until that very specific goddess is done for. Which means we'll be left with the very fast ones. So instead of running away, I let the arms make the first move. Then I answer back with light, heavy hold. The wide kick can do insane damage and has some solid range too. If you completed the combo, just slide away and repeat it. Just be sure to prep a guard buffer at all times, of course. But since we're fighting the gorilla arms, they will most likely parry us, which also baits out that still on bone. Then yeah, same stuff applies from there. Do light counters until things get crowded or until we get pushed away. But at this point of the fight, you can honestly get away with repeating the same string, or the classic light, heavy hold. By now you should have Nimpo if things get messy, and there's also a lot of health upgrades as well. So it's not like we need to be extremely careful anymore since we have all these resources to spend. Plus, things only get easier with each goddess you kill too. So don't be too scared to make the first move at times, because the odds are in our favor. Oh man, the Spider Tank duo. Now if you happen to have the True Inferno ready to go, then yeah, use it once you drop in. It'll destroy both of the outer shells, allowing you to start chaining OTs. But if you don't have True Inferno, Void is still solid, and that's because it can pierce through them and hit a few legs along the way. But since it's pretty late in the game, I'm assuming you found quite a lot of scarabs and have leftover money to spend as well. So, I say grab the scythe and its level 2 upgrade. Level 3 wouldn't hurt either. But it'll just make this boss and the next one coming up so much easier, because this fight gets messy extremely fast, having to deal with all the bullets, missiles, cannon shots, EMPs, flamethrowers from not just one tank, but 2 of these at the same time. And they like to stay close to each other too, so if you somehow avoided one of their attacks, well, you probably won't escape the follow-up from off screen. So for this section, I say use the forbidden tech of the Scythe 360 Heavy. It's powerful, quick startup, has iframes, and easily spammable. So go ahead and spin to win. And for this specific fight, Don't worry about failing QTEs this time around either, just OT as soon as possible because they already start out fully powered anyways. Fingers crossed you did that pretty cleanly because we're immediately thrown into a 3-phase boss soon after. So the faster and safer we got through those tanks, the better. Anyways, the chairman starts out as a dual-wielding mech. One arm has a sweeping flamethrower, which has insane reach, and the other will punch electrical bubbles. But for now, just strafe around him to our right. This will avoid the missiles, but it also avoids the flamethrower a bit easier. So get a move on and wait for it to make the first move. Now you can punish this with the dragon swords running triple heavy or triple light triple heavy, but since you technically have the size, just use 360 heavy. Massive damage, and the iframes will help evade those little tracking missiles too. Oh, if you're ever in a really bad position, use slide run into flying swallow. We're chaining a ton of iframes as we cover a lot of distance, so this will allow us to escape those sweeping flames if you have to. Now for the electrical slam. It has a large windup, so it's kind of hard to miss. Just gotta space yourself and go in afterwards. He might do a second one, so watch out for that. But yeah, stay on the move, avoid the attacks, and chip away at that armor until you delimb both arms. Once that's done, he becomes this flying thing that shoots out wide assortment of projectile attacks. And you know what? This is what Giga Death should have been. Okay, soon as this phase begins, you're able to fire one arrow before the hurt box deactivates. But if you miss it, no worries. All you have to do is avoid the carpet bomb attack that follows. Now, after you do that, ADS and start your bow cancels. Just keep firing until the game breaks a lock on, and that's because he's going to carpet bomb again. This is the exact same setup we saw with the helicopter in day 2. So yeah, avoid it and start shooting as soon as you can. And the last attack we'll see are these sweeping lasers. Kinda reminds me of Griffin a bit. But yeah, just use any iframe moves to get through these. From slide, wind run, flying swallow, charging UTs, and yeah. And if you're further out, it'll only make things easier because of the wider spread. Now it only does 3 sets of these, and once it's finished, it kinda lingers there for a second. So once you dodge that final wave of lasers, start prepping that bow UT. It's not vulnerable just yet, but that's why we're doing this in the meantime. And once it locks on, fire away to do some solid damage. And yeah, after that continue avoiding these projectiles, and eventually, it'll collapse. Now this third and final phase has it become this buzzsaw that'll constantly rush you down. Don't be scared and start slide jumping away early, it'll just make it easier for him to catch you. So instead, sort of walk towards him at a diagonal, and once he's pretty close, then slide past him with that harsh angle. From here, you can instantly ADS into your bow cancels. Pretty simple pattern, he just goes back and forth as you slide through him, but it's very fast paced, and one mistake can really mess you up. So it has that right balance I wish the helicopter boss had. But yeah, once the life bar is empty, the fight isn't over yet, because he'll try and take you down with a desperation attack. And well, here's the trick. Just stand still. Yeah, similar to Smups, sometimes it's best to do nothing. So these lasers are just here to scare you into panicking. But if you face him head on, you'll be able to slide underneath him to land the final blow. Now in my opinion, this is a super good boss fight. It encourages movement, quick reactions, and good positioning. Sounds pretty fun to me. Next is Regent number 3. Now for this fight, it's completely up to you, but you can stand there, guard his first 2 attacks, then react. Or you can stay in constant motion and sort of weave in and out to bait out those attacks as well. Either way, he will always beeline towards you and make the first move. And those possible options have only grown since the last time. So we have to keep an eye out for more towels than ever before. I do like how he's an ever-evolving boss fight. Yeah, the usual stuff is here. The diagonal swipe ender, still punishable, which has the same lead up of the vertical attack. So react and anticipate the finisher since he's likely to delay it at times. Then do the tried and true punish of slide triple heavy before sliding away. He still does the upward forward moving slashes, nothing's changed about him, but a follow-up has been replaced. So instead of doing the piercing rush attack, it's now this projectile grab. So just take wide dashes to avoid it. But still be on the lookout for that piercing attack, because he'll just do it in neutral from now on. Since I mentioned it though, he might toss out those projectiles in neutral as well. Now this orb has a unique gimmick to be aware of, and that's how it's health dependent. So early in the fight, it'll just be one orb, but the further you lower his health, it'll become 2 and then 3. I think it's just the 1 until he has 80% health left, then it becomes 3 back-to-back orbs when it goes below 20%. So once you pick up on that little detail, just keep a mental note of it going forward. Don't want to be caught off guard by a sneaky hit. But most of the fight is dealing with the double shots anyways, so it's not too hard to keep track of either. Now, it is possible to punish it. I like to slide run into onlining 360 heavy. Lots of iframes and does decent damage. Just be sure to back away as fast as possible because he recovers pretty quick. Sometimes he'll even follow up with the same attack. So be ready. We're still not done because he also has new combos, and both are punishable with slide triple heavy. It might be this full kick combo where he leaps and flips, so if we see it end with this sort of cartwheel, then he's punishable. And the other combo ends with this multi-stab ender. That leaves him vulnerable as well, so don't let it go unpunished. He also has the same grab we saw earlier in the game, so ignore it the first time, but if he decides to do the sneaky follow-up, then go ahead and punish. Yeah, Regen has quite the moveset, and honestly one of the best rival fights in the genre because of that. It's just a constant back and forth that requires quick reactions and some solid pattern recognition. And of course he abides by certain rules. He has actual towels, moments of vulnerability, will punish mindless smashing, and rewards consistency. Yeah, it's what every boss should aim to be. Now, Cliff, on the other hand, might have had those things, but he unfortunately was left unchecked. Because he can be NGO forward. Yeah, it's super easy to just flying swallow spam him to death. I suppose every game needs to have one of these, but yeah, slide, run 1, flying swallow, slide, win run, flying swallow, slide, win 1, flying swallow. We're just chaining iframes as we deal a decent amount of damage. Now there is a phase 2, so when he flies up, just shoot him down. It'll go into a cutscene where he takes our bow and arrows, and then he summons backup. Just throw them out, and then just back to the usual flying swallow spam. Now there is a chance he'll do this AoE attack. It's hard to miss because you see this big old circle around him. So leave the little blast radius, and go back in to land still on bone. Let him regenerate, then continue the loop. Will take time, but it's easy. And similar to Genshin, the Regent also gets a 4-3 match. Now everything here is more or less the same. I actually think this version is a little bit easier than the last one, probably because you're meant to learn a lot of the new moves during that previous encounter, while nothing new is added this time around. So in comparison, this fight is just smooth sailing. But yeah, we're using the same basic strategy of maintaining that mid-range while staying in constant motion, more so than standing still and guarding. So I'll let him approach me. Once I see any movement, I'll slide away. It gives us time to react to his potential grabs, rush down attacks, or basic combos. But if he never takes the bait, stand still and guard a few attacks before sliding away to punish. And yeah, everything we have learned along the way is still here. The diagonal swipe, the flurry thrust ender, and he still does the standard 1-2 swipes, but he has a chance to add a single thrust at the very end like in Day 4. So if you ever see that far reaching lunge finisher, then punish with slide triple heavy. The upward slashes made a return as well, but it's back to the piercing follow-up and not the projectile grab. So like before, try to catch his end lag with a single slide heavy. The multi-kick leap and twirl combo so here, so like everything else, punish with slide triple heavy. But remember, there is a chance he won't do these enders at all. So really familiarize yourself with these combos to make sure he actually completes them. But that's it. Be patient, let him make the first move, dodge, then punish. So yeah, if you're comfortable with his patterns during Day 7, then he'll be more than ready for this fight. Which I hope you are, because any remaining health you have will be all you have left going into the next and final boss of the game. You can probably see why we kept some HP upgrades. Not only that, but it actually resets your Nimpo too. Yeah, it's not like God Hand. This game does not refill your resources between the rival fight and the big bad. So it's probably best to use any Nimpo during this final regen fight, because it won't carry over. Get ready for a screen shake, laser beams, enemies just jumping all over the place, and then loud noises just layered on top of each other. Yeah, it's a crazy hectic boss for no reason, just attacking all the senses. Well, at least Razor's Edge has a way to get this done somewhat hassle free. So, if we stay in the back corner, or just the far left side in general, we can avoid most, if not all, of her attacks. Now we can just focus on the approaching enemies and forget about those projectiles and ground slimes. Even though we've been focusing on the katana the entire time, our weapon of choice here will actually be the lunar. Now I know I haven't mentioned it, so the chances that you have it is probably low, and won't have much experience with it either, in the context of Razor's Edge combat system anyways, but don't worry, it's very easy to use in this fight and shouldn't be too expensive either. I think even a level 1 Lunar will be fine enough if you're really short on karma. Okay, now the reason we want to use the Lunar is because of its speed, range, and multi-hits. So it's great to crowd control and build a lot of ki in a short period of time, especially its UT. Alright, with all that being said, start the fight by hugging the left side. Then as enemies spawn in, begin charging that UT. Once enemies get close, let it rip. And great thing is, the initial burst range is pretty good. Then watch as all those hits build up that ki for you. But that's not even the best part, because the UT will end by de-limbing that enemy. Which means we can just mash heavy as soon as it ends because it'll chain into an OT. Yeah, just a little extra cherry on top for even more ki charge. Then make your way to the other corner with slide jumps or wind path to prep your next on-landing UT. Yeah, just continue to move up and down the safe zone for the rest of this phase. Pretty straightforward plan. Now, if things get too crowded where you can't pull this off, the Lunar's light triple heavy string is great to swat them away. Or you can just mash lights or mash heavy, either way. And one more thing, don't forget to drop the boss lock on. So make sure to have the extra camera control because it'll make things easier. But alright, once you've built enough ki to fill this entire bar, then it's time to cast it. Now after using True Inferno, the game shows us mercy by giving us a checkpoint, so we don't have to go through this anytime soon. Wanna know what's even better? Since we technically use Nimpo, we actually get our health fully restored. So we'll go into the second phase pretty healthy. Okay, for this part, we have to fight her directly, and the only chance we can deal damage is after every slam. But just like phase 1, we have ourselves a little safe spot. So, place yourself near the bottom right corner. Not exactly in the corner where that slant is, but right beside it. Then all you have to do is guard and wait, standing here will avoid her slam and even her grab. And all we have to dodge are the occasional full screen swipes and those projectiles, but those things have pretty bad accuracy, so it's not too bad. Anyways, once he slams, just slide on in and do as many light attacks as possible. For a while I would do slide heavy, but it will force her to reel back, while the lights on the other hand did not. So it means we can land way more hits and tack on more damage a lot faster by using light attacks only. So be sure to do that instead. Now once you do that first steel on bone animation, she'll destroy the left side of the building, so you'll be fine. However, after landing the final steel on bone, like when she reached 0 health, quickly move to the middle of the arena, and that's because the right side will become a death zone. That's the only scary part about this fight, but it's extremely hard to miss once you know about it. So, just keep slashing away, and she'll go down in no time. And that's Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. By far the most underrated entry in the modern trilogy. That's because he addresses many of the issues players had with Vanilla 3 and fixes them. So it turned a very westernized, oversimplistic action game that was filled with questionable design choices into a real Ninja Gaiden game. It brought back the wide arsenal, the aggressive enemies, the short time to kill, the fast movement, and the brutal animations. It's all there. So that visceral gameplay the series has grown into has reached this new peak. And I actually really like that it does its own thing, while still being faithful to the core fundamentals. So in my opinion, it has, without a doubt, earned a spot amongst the rest. And I gotta bring this up here, but this puts NG2B to shame. Because in a few months, this re-release included more weapons and impos, brought back an actual upgrade system, added past enemies and bosses, improved AI in general, D-limbs and OTs were reintroduced, Rework still on bones and no longer be random. Bloody Rage made its debut. Collectibles from Golden Scarabs to Crystal Challenges were added. Toned down those questionable story bits. Removed a large amount of QTEs. Not all, but most. Included 3 extra playable characters who all have seen a massive overhaul as well. Definitely on equal footing with Ryu now, that's for sure. And there's multiple costumes for each of those characters as well. Like, the amount of work and effort that was put into this re-release is pretty insane. But that's not even the best part, because Chapter Challenge is sort of the star of the show. So this is basically the NG Plus mode where you can replay any day as any character. But it also removes many of those hindrances of the story mode. So now you can skip the mission briefing load screens at the start. Removes or heavily reduces QTEs like kunai climbs and walking sections where you're just tumbling around. Some cutscenes were taken out, even boss phases too. And you know what? Even the final boss was deleted in Chapter Challenge. So once you defeat Theodore, that's it. Just ends there. Yeah, Chapter Challenge is easily one of my favorite modes in the series and where this game shines. It just streamlines everything and makes it highly replayable. Thing is, it's only available for difficulties you've beaten, however. So you still need to get through each difficulty before you can pick and choose all these different options. But once you do, Razor's Edge and Chapter Challenge will have the best pacing, hands down. So if you want back-to-back fights with no downtime, then this is your game. One has adventure aspects to break up the action with exploration bits like puzzle solving and a few platforming obstacles. While 2 was slowed down with its many shooting gallery moments against the Quetzalcoatl, respawning jellyfish, gauges, big red fish, rocket launchers and windows, and archers that are basically hit scan. Just a lot of valleys to get through in general. But 3, the Chapter Challenge specifically, removes most of the hiccups for this non-stop experience, just letting you hop into the action. So as you can tell, Razor's Edge is not just a slightly altered version of Vanilla 3, far from it. It's an entirely reworked, retooled, revamped game that actually fixed things from the ground up. And that's pretty impressive given their short turnaround. So all those improvements and extra content makes it the definitive way to play 3. This is how it was done and really outclasses NG2B in that regard. So that's why Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge deserves so much more recognition than it gets. But instead, it gets shunned by the wider gaming community. Sucks that Vanilla 3 left such a stain on the name, but that goes to show how powerful word of mouth can be. It echoes for years. But for those who know, this game has the greatest comeback story the genre has ever seen. It fixes most of the original issues while giving us this amazing combat system to dig into. And not just for one character, but 4. So yeah, if you ever held off on playing this game for whatever reason, well, you're missing out on something special. So give it a try.